Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. The Division Championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy, and thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Raker, your host for this edition of the program. You know, there are a lot of issues working their way through the process of the legislation, committee hearings, votes, enactments of new laws here in the state of Minnesota as well as nationally. And there are some of those issues that are of significance and importance to many of the people here in Minnesota and nationally. And here today to share with us the policies that AARP Minnesota advocates for is Thomas Elness. Thomas, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thomas is the Associate State Director for Advocacy for AARP Minnesota. Thomas, we want you to tell us about AARP and the issues, the policies that we're advocating for. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this role, and why you've chosen this as a career.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. So this is my second month back in Minnesota. I've spent the last dozen or so years in South Dakota, but grew up in Southwest Minnesota, and all my family's still in Minnesota, and have always had an interest in public policy and the ability for ordinary people to make decisions that impact other people's lives. And so in my previous work, I was working on issues related to Alzheimer's and dementia, and so worked closely with my now colleagues at AARP South Dakota, and got a chance to see the impact that AARP can have, the trust that AARP has built with the community and their members. And so knew that when this opportunity came about, not only was it about coming back to Minnesota where I grew up, but also joining an organization that has earned the trust of its members and its community to be able to make a difference.
So great things that brought you back to Minnesota, and we're glad you're back in our state working now for people here in Minnesota. Tell us a little bit more about AARP before we get into some of the policy issues. Sure. We know that AARP is nonpartisan and non-political, but tell us a little bit more about the organization here in Minnesota and nationally, if you can.
Sure. So, you know, AARP was founded in 1958, and it was really founded from a sense of providing older folks dignity and purpose. And Bill, I don't know how many quote-worthy things you have, but every day when I walk into the office, I see a wall of quotes from Ethel Percy Andrews, our founder in 1958. And she was a retired educator who saw that older Americans weren't being given the opportunities that she felt like they deserved. And so that was really the foundation of AARP. And this organization has evolved and grown to be not only a place that is providing community and trusted information, but also an opportunity to advocate for the needs of older people, and in our case, older Minnesotans. So we have more than 620,000 members in Minnesota, and I try to think about them when I'm at the state capitol because there's days where I might think, I don't want to go to this meeting or talk to this person, and then I try to literally imagine those 600,000 members standing behind me saying, go have the conversation, go be our advocate. So I think it's an important role and grateful for the opportunity to be with such a great organization.
Well, let's talk about the numbers for just a little bit. You mentioned that AAR's membership here in Minnesota is in excess of 600,000. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of political power. That's a lot of people being represented there. And at the national level, the membership is what, 32 million?
I think it's 38 million.
38
now,
million
yeah.
People who are in AARP nationally. Mm-hmm. AARP is a membership organization, right?
That's correct.
So who's eligible to be a member of AARP?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So as I've been meeting new legislators and folks around the Capitol, they say, you look a little young to be with AARP. And I remind them, anyone over 18 can join AARP. So our primary focus and sort of role that we play in this space is to advocate for the needs of Minnesotans who are older than 50. And there's certain benefits that come with AARP membership when you turn 50, but anybody over 18 can be a member.
Just go to aarp.org and open up your membership if you don't already have one.
That's exactly right.
Well, the advocacy work that you do is just a part of the office of AARP Minnesota. How many employees are there, and what are some of the roles that they have?
Yeah, so there's 8 of us on the team. So we are engaging in advocacy, as you said. So like my work at the state capitol, my colleague Aaron is working with our volunteer advocates to make sure that they're kept up to speed on what's happening at the Capitol and know how they can use their voice and giving them the platform that they need to engage. But we're also working in community as well on livable communities, investing in communities, collaborating to be an age-friendly state. And then we have other members on the team that make the whole thing go. So from our executive director to business operations, it's a really impressive team that I think is dedicated to AARP's mission.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the policy issues that you are advocating for on behalf of AARP and all of our members here in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But up front, let's establish the fact that policy issues that you advocate for, it's not partisan, mm-hmm. right? It's not from the left, it's not from the right, it's all about policies. You don't advocate for any parties or any individuals. And the policies that you advocate for are not just for AARP members. And they apply to everyone, and many times it includes, newborns to however people live to be how old, right?
Sure.
So within that context, lay out for us what the policy priorities are here in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it. One of the quotes from our founder that I walk past every day on the way to work is, what we do for all. And so while our focus and sort of where we can be the voice in a lot of discussions is for older Minnesotans, we know that the effects of that are, from 1 to 101, and it can have a really big impact on our state. So some of the things that we're working on this session are the creation of a consumer fraud restitution fund. We know that far too many Minnesotans are being scammed, and this restitution fund is a way to not only try to help get people some of their money back, but also crack down on some of these scams that older Minnesotans are frankly just tired of and want to see go away. Another priority is protecting those Minnesotans who are in assisted living facilities. Minnesota was the very last state in the nation to license assisted living, and that didn't come till 2019. So this is still fresh law in a sense, and so we gotta work every year to make sure that we're protecting that law, and if anything, adding to it, because we hear from members and concerned Minnesotans all the time that their loved ones might need some more protection in assisted living. What that could look like is not being required to have guardianship in order to begin to live in an assisted living facility. Protection from unfair rate increases, particularly when there's a takeover, maybe from a nonprofit to a for-profit entity that's really just seeking to make a buck. So lots of ways that we're engaging in the assisted living space too.
Are there places where viewers can go to get more detail about some of these issues if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So AARP.org is always the place to start, and then you can navigate to Minnesota and learn about some of the advocacy work that we are doing at the state level as well. Because, and you alluded to this earlier, it's hearing from the voices of Minnesotans that can really make an impact in the Capitol. And that's where AARP is well positioned to be able to communicate to our members and others opportunities to engage with lawmakers, remind them of the needs of older Minnesotans. So absolutely, AARP.org is the place to start.
Well, another place our viewers can look for more information about the Consumer Fraud Restitution Fund is on AARP, accesstodemocracy.com. On Access to Democracy in our archives is an interview that I did here a few weeks ago with Jessica Whitney from the Attorney General's office here in Minnesota. And the whole program really was about the restitution fund.
Sure.
What it is, how it will work, why it's really important that we have something like that for victims of fraud here in Minnesota. So you can find additional information if you want to go listen to that recorded program of Access to Democracy with Jessica Whitney from the AG's office. AARP recently had something they call Lobby Day. Now, I know that's related to the advocacy work that you do. Tell us a little bit about what happened on Lobby Day.
Certainly. So this is like Christmas Day in the advocacy world. This is when we invite really all of our volunteer advocates to join us at the state capitol. And what I love about it is, and we're so fortunate to be able to have democracy where people can show up at their state capitol and see where decisions are made and be influencers in the outcome of that. And that's a privilege that we take very seriously, and I think AARP is proud to be a part of giving people the tools that they need to advocate. So this year's Lobby Day was no exception. We had, I think it was over 60 folks that ended up showing up for Lobby Day and meeting with a whole variety of lawmakers to let them know about our priorities. So people will always tell us that they recognize the red vests around the state capitol, and this year we certainly brought the red vests as well.
So the red vest is something that the AARP volunteers are given, and they
right.
wear when they're out advocating for the issues that AARP wants to advance. And I know that these volunteers with the red vest can show up in committee hearings, a Senate committee hearing or a House committee hearing on some issue that AARP is supporting. And they really stand out. They're noticed by the legislators when they're in the audience.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think, because when you do the math, even when there's 60 of us there, each of those volunteers represent 10,000 members. I mean, that's a lot of people. And so people know that it's not just the 6 or 7 or 8 AARP volunteers that are there, but that they really represent a much larger association of Minnesotans who really care about these issues and come to understand them and want to make sure that older Minnesotans are part of the discussions that are happening at the Capitol.
And there's another issue that maybe you can tell us a little bit more about, is that the Governor's Council on Aging.
Yeah.
What's that about, and what are they trying to accomplish? What's their mission?
Yeah, so several years ago, AARP worked closely to enact the Age-Friendly Council for Minnesota. That's set to expire in 2027, and so we are advocating for legislation that would continue that work. This is really the only place in the state of Minnesota where key stakeholders who really ought to be engaged on issues of aging and opportunities of aging are coming together to not only collaborate for the sake of collaboration, but also to put together a multi-sector blueprint on aging, a 10-year plan, distributing community grants to community innovators throughout the entire state of Minnesota who are thinking about how can we take advantage of the opportunities of an aging state. And we just don't want to see that go away. And certainly in the midst of the development of a state plan, on aging. So now's a good time to make sure that we continue that investment and not let it go away.
Well, it's important that our viewers understand, and I think many of them already do, that the population of Minnesota is aging. What's the statistic? There are more people, over 65 than there are school-age children?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, we're an aging state, and I think, far too often that's exclusively seen as a challenge, and we miss the chance to see that also as an opportunity. And that's one of the things that the Age-Friendly Council is doing is, we know that with an aging population come challenges, but we can't lose sight of the opportunities of that as well.
And Thomas, I know that there is a program that AARP has that's related to this. It's called Livable Communities. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's all about?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot about this in the last couple of months, since joining AARP, but AARP is out in communities doing really impactful work, and that was essential to not only our founders' mission, but I think our ability to be a trusted resource in communities. You got to be there, and you got to show up, and AARP is proud to do that as well. So, what I've learned is that looks like community grants, it looks like community education, and just showing up in communities for people to know that AARP is there, what they offer, and to be a trusted resource.
And parts of that program have to do with housing, mm-hmm. With transportation, with green space, open space, opportunities for leisure and entertainment, access to medical facilities and sure. all of those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that we keep a focus mm-hmm. on what it means to be a livable community as mm-hmm. the population in Minnesota ages.
That's exactly right. And that's where, I think it's really special how AARP can blend sort of this direct community work with our advocacy work. So you mentioned housing. AARP Minnesota is proud to be part of a Yes to Homes coalition that is bringing together folks who aren't together on much else, quite frankly. This is a wide-spanning ideology group from across the state of Minnesota that's thinking about how do we address affordable housing. We have, depending on the numbers you look at, over 100,000 units short of affordable housing needs in Minnesota. And so we're trying to figure out what is the solution to that and be a part of that, again, on behalf of older Minnesotans.
So we've talked a little bit about the legislative issues, priorities here in Minnesota. At the national level, there are a couple of things that AARP has as top priorities that they're working on. And I'll mention those, and if you have any comments to add sure. to them, that would be great. Sure. I think number one on the list right now is preserving Social Security. There's 70 million Americans that get a Social Security check every week or every month. We wish it would be every week, but it's every month. And that number is only going to continue to grow as the population of the entire country ages. So we know why that's number one. Any thoughts related to that before I mention number two?
Sure. I think, as always, we would point people to AARP.org. Things can change quickly, particularly at the federal level. And so to just know that AARP is there as not only to have your back in DC and represent those needs, but also just to provide clear, trusted information as well.
And clearly, the preservation of Social Security is not a partisan issue, or shouldn't be a partisan issue, because irrespective of what a person's political beliefs might be, they, when they reach certain requirements, can, get the benefits of Social Security that they've earned.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Well, another topic at the national level that's getting a lot of attention is the preservation of Medicare and Medicaid. Again, millions of people here in the United States rely on the services of those programs, the benefits that come from those programs. So any word more on what AARP is doing to make sure, working really hard to keep Medicare and Medicaid around?
Yeah, again, I mean, AARP is committed to having people's backs in this fight. And, thankfully, I work with colleagues who work more closely on the federal level than I do. So they would probably be the ones to ask. However, this is an ever-evolving situation. AARP is proud to be part of alliances that are thinking about how do we protect the things that you're talking about, not only Social Security, but Medicare and Medicaid as well, and delivering them in a way, particularly with Social Security, that is accessible for people. And our team is putting out statements on that at this point almost daily, so I would just continue to encourage people to visit AARP.org for more information on that.
Glad you reminded folks of where they can get this information. Even on the website, I think there's an opportunity for people to put out comments to their legislators about this issue. Is that right?
Yeah, AARP is always working to make sure that people can make their voices heard to their lawmakers at the state and federal level. So you're exactly right. There's an action alert opportunity right now on the federal side. We're doing the same thing at the state level for what's happening here in the Capitol. So one of the best things you can always do is reach out to your lawmaker, and AARP tries to make it so that you feel empowered to do that you have good information, and you have access to the folks that are making decisions on your behalf.
That's so important. I mean, that's what makes a democracy a democracy. That's what makes a democracy work. Right. When the citizens get involved and they communicate to their legislators the issues that are important to them, why they're important, how those issues impact the lives that people are trying to live here in the United States. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the priorities that AARP has here in Minnesota. We've mentioned a couple of priorities at the national level. I'd like to just talk a little bit and remind folks of some of the legislative victories that AARP and the whole state of Minnesota enjoyed during the 2024 legislative session, right?
Sure.
So, one of the ones I think that appeals to a lot of older folks, the driver's education, driver's training program, that if you take that, many insurance companies, I think in Minnesota, it's mandated that your automobile insurance company would give you a discount because you've taken this certified course.
Right.
And it used to be an 8-hour course. And AARP and some other organizations worked together, and so now it's only 4 hours.
That's right.
Right? And I think it's been scientifically established that the people who go through the 4-hour course were exposed to as much material and had as much learning opportunity as if it were drawn out over 8 hours. So that's major,
It is, and I think you hit on a good point that safety, remained a key component of this. But when the research shows that it can have the same effect, and that it would incentivize more older Minnesotans to be taking the course, I think that was a big win for my predecessor for sure.
And let's talk about another win that we had, which was the banning of predatory real estate transactions here in Minnesota. In fact, there was, I think it was yesterday or very recently, there was a big article in the Star Tribune newspaper about what this Attorney General's office here in Minnesota has been able to do is to ban this company called MV Realty, based in Florida, I think, where they would come in and find vulnerable adults who owned property and trick them into executing a contract for a little bit of amount of money up front, $300, $500, that bound that individual and their heirs for 40 years to the terms and conditions of this onerous contract that was signed. Another major victory, I think, for people here in Minnesota that AARP helped to achieve.
Absolutely, and it's one of those examples, you at the forefront talked about what kind of issues does AARP take on, and to me this is a clear example of this just isn't a fair practice, and so being on the side of consumers and looking out for older Minnesotans to avoid, frankly, scams like these, so absolutely.
Speaking of scams, there was another thing that was accomplished here in Minnesota last year thanks to the support of AARP, and that is cryptocurrency ATMs that are popping up everywhere, not just in Minnesota, but all over the country, where the scammers will direct their victims to take cash, go to one of these ATMs, and purchase cryptocurrency that is forwarded to the scammer. But here in Minnesota, now there's a law that says the ATM needs to be labeled with a warning. There's a limit to how much money a person can put in one day. If they put in money and they subsequently found out that they've been in a scam, if they're within a certain window, they have the opportunity maybe to get some or all of that money back. Major, major accomplishment to thwart the scammers who are taking advantage of Minnesotans.
Certainly. Again, just another consumer protection where when you have vulnerable adults, and there needs to be reasonable and fair protections, and definitely a proud win for AARP.
Thomas, this has been a really interesting and informative conversation that we've had. We've got a minute and a half left in the program. Sure. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave our viewers with about yourself and AARP?
Sure. Well, it has really been quite the whirlwind of a 2 months here. I was listening on the way in, and somebody said, I've been doing this work in Minnesota's capital for 28 years. This is the strangest session yet. So I'll say it's been my strangest session as well. And I think AARP is uniquely positioned for a time like this, when you have clearly divided government, and you have to figure out how to work in not only a bipartisan way, but in a way that is going to bring people together and make a positive impact in Minnesota communities and for older Minnesotans. And so I'm proud of the work that we're doing and will continue to do for Minnesotans.
Thomas, thank you for the work that you are doing for Minnesotans. Thank you for the work you do for AARP. And thank you for being our guest today on Access to Democracy. We wish you every success as you continue to work with the legislators to try to get these really important issues passed and in effect for the benefit of all Minnesotans.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for watching Access to Democracy.